Ladies and gentlemen, the journey for focus, clarity, and mental mastery is about to begin. Live from WSIC Studios on the shores of Lake Norman, the show that gives you the tools to think sharper, sleep deeper, manage stress, and unlock your full mental potential. This is Your Brain Matters. And now, with over 30 years of brain science, more than 70,000 brain analyses, bringing neuroscience to everyday life, here's your host, Dr. Tim Royer.
Welcome. Over 30 years. What did I do? Start this at 10 years old? Like, how in the world have I been doing this so long?
Yeah, but you did have a birthday and everybody knows about it.
Oh, shoot. I forgot.
We can't really milk that one right now.
60.
The word is out.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, well, I really like this series we're on.
Yes.
Because I just think that this series is for everybody.
It is.
Right?
It totally is. I mean, think about just this week since we last were here, how much anxiety each of you and I have dealt with.
Yeah. And we were just talking about before we started the Olympics, right?
Yes. Watching that anxiety.
Right. And
that is palpable.
It's crazy. I mean, you feel a little anxious. I feel like the guy's about ready to go down this, jump or, do the speed skating and all the different things. And you feel it as you're watching it, right?
Yeah.
But then you kind of watch these people who have been training for years and years, and they're the best in the world at this. They're the best they've won every, championship, and then they get on this stage, and what happens, right?
Right. Honestly, this timing for talking about this is just so perfect with the Olympics because what we know about the brain and the physiology of anxiety, you can see an athlete that actually performs above their level.
Yes, because of the anxiety.
Yes. And then you can see where the anxiety must do a tipping point and then they can't perform. And there's this magic sweet spot somewhere in there because every one of the athletes are so good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really difficult to, apparently there are some cross-country skiers that are just head and shoulders above the rest. But for the most part, it's such an even playing field that it matters how you show up on that day.
Yeah. And it's not always just the ability. Actually, many times more than that. And when we get into more talking about the adrenal system, in some episodes in the future, we'll get back to this thing called allostatic load, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you want load. It's not like you're not decreasing stress. The heart's a muscle. It needs to pump. It needs to stress. But there are some really good scientists and researchers in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s that discovered this whole concept of load and that we need to put load on the system to get it stronger. But then this thing called allostatic load is you can actually break it. You can put too much load.
Yep.
And that's kind of the science behind this whole why these people are cracking. Why is the best figure skater, ever, the quad god, why is this happening to him? It's not that he hasn't done a million of those, but the brain gets involved in the possibility versus probability and all those things. Wow.
Yeah, you just think about the electricity, it all goes back to the electricity.
Yes.
And it's kind of fun because today, our word for today is rewire.
Yeah.
Right? So we're
Love it.
If you think about that poor skater, there was a glitch.
Yes.
In the electrical firing, and it just interfered with his ability to perform. But we are going to talk today about the actual reality of rewiring.
Yeah,
which is a fantastic reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times people feel that, I was born this way, and so this is what I'm stuck with, so this is what I'll do my whole life. But no. That is, if you believe your brain matters, which we do, then you will be able to go into the space that we're going to talk about where we literally can rewire.
Right.
And how do we do that? So that's going to be fun. We're going to talk about all that today.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've had the last two episodes where we recognized anxiety
Yep.
And then last week was really fun where we talked about reveal. Go back and listen to that if you get a chance.
Yeah.
We have some upcoming events. I'm speaking at the Women's Sports and Health Expo in Grand Rapids, Michigan on Saturday, which is going to be enjoyable. I'm looking forward to that. A lot of athletes and people focused on health. And then next Monday, for an organization that works with children and adolescents, Wedgwood, we're doing the State of the Child event where I'm doing speaking on the brain and how important the brain is to child development and learning.
Do you think you'll talk about anxiety?
No, kids don't experience anxiety.
Yes.
I know we will talk about anxiety. We'll talk about the brain. We'll talk about the autonomic nervous system. We'll talk about sympathetic, parasympathetic. These things matter.
Yes.
They matter. You need to show up.
Yes.
You need to show up. And the way you show up is managing these things. And we don't want to just leave you in a vacuum out there. We want to give you resources. So Amy and I are donating, giving, whatever. Tsunami Books, which is a book that we've written about anxiety. We're very committed to trying to help people with this. Tsunami is available to anyone out there. All you have to do is text 616-341-2299, 616-341-2299, and get a free book, Tsunami. So as we go into the next section, we're going to talk about the science today. We're going to do Into the Mind, and we're also going to be doing the Cortex case study. Want you to remember that this is not a small topic. Over 30% of people will experience a clinical anxiety disorder in their lifetime. 30%, that's a lot of people. So next time you're at Starbucks and you're looking around, realize that a third of the people there, from behind the desk that are sitting there drinking their coffee, whatever, a third of them experience some type of clinical anxiety disorder.
Mm-hmm.
With that, I'm going to go into the quote.
Okay.
Should we do the quote?
Yeah.
Right. So this is coming on the heels of the golf tournament that I was at this weekend.
Yeah. Where maybe you experienced some anxiety.
I did, because I did not win. I did not win.
He did not win, everyone. He came in second.
Yeah, or third or fourth. I don't know. But it wasn't good. So, but
It was good. You came in second.
It was good. It was good.
That's what I don't like, is when you don't get the gold medal, it's like you're a loser.
Well, to quote Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize we were quoting Ricky Bobby today.
Golly. So this is from I had said I went on this golf outing with my three best friends. This is the third one. Tim Brown, we call him Brownie. His title is he's a national sales account manager for industrial gases. Okay. And I asked him, I said, what does it mean, your brain matters? And he says it regulates and controls everything that I do. And then in pure Brownie fashion, he said, because without my brain, who else is going to supply all this charm, strategy, and occasional chaos? And I think he does speak to the whole spectrum of our brain, that it takes us from creativity to calmness to stress to chaos to tunnel vision. It takes us on the whole journey.
It does it all.
Yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. We are continuing our conversation regarding anxiety.
Yeah.
And we're really going to go now into what Doc and I do for a living, which makes it, this is what we're passionate about, what turns the crank, all that good stuff is, did you know that you can retrain your autonomic nervous system? And your autonomic nervous system is what is experiencing or reacting with anxiety.
Right.
So what we're saying is that we can learn to not only manage anxiety, but actually toy around with the word mastering it, which I think we were maybe talking a little bit about that with the Olympians, because some of them have learned how to deal with it, manage it, and that's mastery. So that's where we're going. So we also have to mention the two words that we finished the program with last week, probability and possibility. Because everything that we talk about when we're talking about anxiety kind of hinges on how you see those two things. So that'll be part of our conversation as well. So we're going to grill Doc a little bit. So we're going to start with breathing.
Yes.
Because that is where the most basic foundation of how we will, one, decrease the level of stress, and two, manage the level of stress. So fire away.
Yes, because your brain matters, right?
Oh, it's all there. That's, yeah.
And underneath or over top of all of this is the brain's capacity to learn.
Oh, yeah.
And we've talked about this time and time again. Don't get stuck in the model where we currently are in the last 20, 30 years is the only way to manage is to chemically alter.
Yeah.
The greatest power that exists in the universe is the brain's ability to learn. Okay, it learns to learn. And you know what? It learned to make you anxious, right?
Oh.
It learned to do that. You did not you might have had some genetic wiring and some epigenetics that situations brought that up. But again, that was learned and taught, and in a sense, it got wired into your DNA because it was learned, not because somebody put a chemical in there to alter that. Okay.
That is really good what you're saying there, place to start. Because then you would understand why we say rewire. Because you're saying the original wiring, was maybe it was vulnerable in a certain direction, but it had to jump through a few hoops to get anxious.
Yes.
Right? And so we're going to say we can rewire that.
Yeah, the brain adapts. And so it can adapt in any direction. It's how are we teaching that? I mean, you've learned so many complex things, everybody out there. I mean, before you were the age of 3, you probably learned more than you'll ever learn in your lifetime. Walking and talking and feelings and all kinds of stuff that come in. And we have to use learning to rewire. Learning is above everything. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the place we learn is we habituate physiologically upstream. We got to get away from just, hey, don't be anxious. Well, really, that doesn't do anything. Like people will tell me, hey, my kid's anxious, having this temper tantrum or whatever. When somebody's full blown into an anxiety attack, I can't get them out typically. We have to catch that way early, right?
Yep.
And I've been doing this for a very long time. And so it's teaching how to manage these things upstream, not just when the event is happening. And so the place that starts is your breathing. So you have to get the breathing under control. And by breathing, I'm not just talking about yoga app, take a few deep breaths. You're not going to get there in a few deep breaths, okay? It's going to take structured diaphragmatic breathing, building this base for weeks, months, so that your body starts to respond differently when you're breathing.
Yeah, I love what you're saying because it does take time and training and consistency. You can't just do like a 3-minute session and be like, I don't feel any better. It's more like, no, you learned something in those 3 minutes. Now you have to do it again and again and again because you're training the diaphragm muscle. You're training the heart's response to the breathing. You're training the vagus nerve. I mean, why would that only be an overnight thing? Like this takes time. You need to say like, okay, let's see what you look like in a week from now doing 3 sessions of breathing a day, 3-minute sessions. And then let's talk about where things feel in a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks.
Right, and measure it. Not just how am I feeling, but measure it with quantifiable data. So we have a breathing belt that we put on somebody that's going to measure how they're taking in oxygen by looking at how the diaphragm's moving, by registering the belly.
Yep.
And then from there, we're looking at what is going on in the heart, because the heart is completely reliant on the oxygen. And how that oxygen's coming in is going to determine how the heart is working. Is it going to get in an anxious state? So let's rewind this to somebody, they're 30 years old, but when they were 7, 8 years old, they experienced trauma or they grew up in a very dysfunctional home, right? And automatically, because of the fight flight state, the sympathetic, they started to breathe very shallow and rapid and in a very hyper alert way. And they did that not just for 3 minutes, right? You know, they did it day in, day out, week in, month out, year, decade. Now we come in and say, okay, we got to change that breathing style that you have adapted to. And they do it 3 times and say, well, I'm not better. Well, of course you're not better. This is like learning to snowboard or you know, do some complex activity. It's going to take time and time again down that slope to be able to do that efficiently. And we have to retrain that breathing. Yeah.
That's so funny because sometimes when we're working with clients, they'll say like, why am I paying for this belt to do this 3-minute exercise? Like, what am I even paying for? And I'm like, oh my word, what you're paying for is like, you're literally changing your autonomic nervous system. It's affecting all your organs.
Everything.
Your brain is firing differently. And we know it because we measure it.
Right. We're measuring what the vagus nerve is doing when you're breathing differently. I mean, just this morning, I've already seen 20 readings come in of different people's vagus nerve. And I know, and what I'm saying back to, oh, you're breathing too fast today. You're breathing too slow today. We're trying to find that optimal spot because when I get the oxygen in, remember, 85% of my brain's energy comes from oxygen. So in managing anxiety, we have to start with oxygen. Thought processes, cognitive restructuring, all those things are good. But if the oxygen is awful, you will not be able to change that. And so then from the oxygen, we go to the heart. We've alluded to those few of those things. Heart coherence, super important stuff. Go to heartmath.com. Just read their work on coherence. It's absolutely unbelievable. 16,000 people over 10 weeks of breathing exercises decreased. This is with technology, not just yoga. Okay. Technology decreased anxiety by 48% and depression by 56%. In our published research on this in clinical populations of 300 anxiety disorder and depressive disorder patients, we saw 81% of the people go from clinical to normal through breathing, just breathing and measuring what their heart's doing in coherence.
That's incredible. When you do change that heart coherence, you have literally changed from a possibility type anxiety to a probability type calmness within you. That's like within your heart. Like, so then that's going to send messages to your brain.
Right. And you said it on the way over here, which I was like, wow, that's really good. You said when you're doing this, the probability now becomes predictable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Because you're training. It's just like I've learned the letter A. So I'm always going to remember that letter A the rest of my life. But the first time I saw the letter A, it was just some abstract shape, right? And I learned that. In the breathing, I have to learn kind of this new language for my body, right? And brain. Yeah. And then once I learn that, then I can look upstream further at the brain. And you mentioned the electrical activity. And you kind of use that kind of metaphorically, but you also used it literally. Like we can measure that electrical activity. And had we seen, you know, this ice skater before that event, the electrical activity in his brain would have looked completely different than it normally does. We can read that. That's not oh, how am I feeling today? It's, I can see it. I can read it and measure it. And that's our EEG feedback technology that comes in our kits that read the breathing, the heart, and then the EEG is just profound at this.
Yeah. Yep. And that is, again, just learning. It's just repetition with the feedback, the neurofeedback that helps the brain learn that it can function in a more calm state without using all those fast active waves all the time. We need them at certain times, but we don't want to run there all the time.
Exactly. And when we can control that speed of the electrical current, now I've got the oxygen under control. I've got the heart and the vagus nerve under control. I've got the brain under control. Now we can go downstream and start to work with some of the thought processes. And that's where we're going to talk more about this later, but systematic desensitization. Yes. I have to kind of quantify what's going on inside of me. Okay. So the first is, what is this thing? You know, and really describe what that feeling is, what that emotion is, kind of even journal that out. And then once I have that, I can now start to rate it.
Yep.
And I like to start with a bigger scale, like 0 to 100, and what is the worst level of this that you can experience?
Mhm.
Okay. What is the 0 point? What is the 1? And then let's take some specific events where you've experienced this emotion of anxiety, and let's start putting on what's a 25, what's a 50, what's a 75.
That's great. 'Cause that gives you the feeling that you have some say in the matter.
Yeah, and you have to quantify it first. If
Yeah.
you can't quantify it, it gets too squishy and overwhelming, like we talked before. It gets bigger than it really is. Right?
Got it. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, let's go into the mind and let's see how this played out in real life with us.
Okay, welcome back. We're going to talk about some of our own experience with anxiety, levels of anxiety, and especially in relation to our children.
Oh, yes.
Because we talked about my terrible tennis anxiety.
Debacle. Sorry.
Ouch. And then we talked to you last week about some of the stuff like waking up and feeling anxious about, finances and things like that. And then it's just natural. We got to talk about the kids because we have 4 kids, all very different personalities, but we can remember anxiety in each of their spaces. And it's so important to recognize it, even though it looks different. And that's what we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is you got to know what you're looking at first. And then we were so fortunate to have the neurofeedback and biofeedback by the time the kids were in grade school. And that, man, did that open our eyes, because like we spoke about earlier, I believe our son, he was inattentive at school. That's what was always being told to us. And so we thought we had a, ADHD type of a problem. And really, once we found out the objective measurements, it was the exact opposite.
Totally opposite.
And it was more that there was more underlying anxiety. So when I look back at the ways I was parenting him, not good, not good, because I was more like trying to get on him to focus and get on him to pay attention. And that was only making things worse. Yeah. So anyway, Doc's going to, because he did pediatric psychology full time for many years, he has the deepest take on all that was going on with the kids. Sometimes he would say, well, don't you see what's going on here? I'd be like, nope, completely missed that. I was looking,
that's not true.
I would be more like attentive to like, what are they eating and what is their temperature and things like that. But the behaviors of kids is, it's hard to interpret.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, easier to interpret than adults, where we have like 20 layers of defense mechanisms.
I suppose that is true.
I think it becomes pretty, when you step back and kind of look at it, and a lot of times you can use yourself, I think, as a thermostat on it.
Yeah.
If you're getting anxious as a parent, it's very likely your child's anxious,
Oh, yeah.
If you're getting angry, it's probably very likely that your child's anxious because you're irritated, like they can't get through this. What are people going to think of me as a parent? Are they going to develop into this, person? And we get stuck in this pattern as parents of, we want this diversity and uniqueness, but at the same time, we want this sameness, and they're not meeting the norm at 4 years and 3 months. And it's like, but I thought we were about like, everybody kind of being different and kind of, finding out who that true person is. So it is this tricky thing as a parent, is you get stuck in these expectations that the world is kind of putting on you. And then there's things that you should be paying attention to when they're not hitting developmental milestones.
That is so hard. If I could go back and do my mothering again, that I would say was something I found the elementary school years. I lived by those measurements of what's the norm. I lived by them. And then if one of the kids was outside of the norm, then I was panicking. And like you said, like all these kids are different. Like they just need a little time, or maybe they'll catch up in a certain stage. They'll go leaps and bounds, but man, in elementary school, at least when our kids were in, it was all about standardization. So all these marks throughout the years you would get back. And, we had 4 kids, so obviously they didn't all land on the same mark. And so then that would be producing anxiety for me.
Exactly. And whenever I'm talking about anxiety in kids, I always go back to first, before we even deal with the kids, what's going on with mom, what's going on with dad, what's going on with the home.
Yep.
And you remember last week we talked about structure and how kids, everybody needs structure, boundaries, but especially kids because their emotions are starting to develop. And if they're pushing on the walls, and the walls are moving, that isn't actually, I mean, they might like the power of that, that they can change the rules by pushing hard on them. But in reality, that creates this underlying anxiety is, why are the walls moving? Why is the ceiling going to cave in? I mean, they need the predictability because their brains aren't really at a point yet that they understand all the abstractness of things behind them. So structure is very important. So that starts with the individual parent, but then it starts as the parent as a couple. The number one thing I say to families who call me in crisis about their kids and stuff is like, hey, how long have you and your spouse spent talking about what's going on? What I want you to do is I want you to get somebody to watch the kids 2 times this week, and you need to go on a long walk and you need to start talking, and getting on the same page and providing structure. I think specifically in our kids, we saw a lot of different types of things because our kids are very diverse, different. And, things starting with just anxiety about sleeping. We had one of our kids who hit late elementary, middle school, who her brain was running so fast and she was just thinking of so many things that sleep was very difficult for her to obtain. You remember that? Yeah. And she would get so anxious about sleeping and, come to the room and, crying. And, eventually you're going to get frustrated with that, but realizing that there's anxiety here and how to address that. Yeah. And then we have, a lot of our kids who've performed in sports. One in particular was very good at sports, but also had a lot of pregame and game anxiety and how to manage that. Yeah. Academic performance. Yeah. With another one, it was just the anxiety. It hits all of us. Yeah. And it's very interesting as we were talking about the kids. Every one of them had a stage, and we have one in particular where it was so strong. Well, for that one child that when we started doing the breathing and we started doing the EEG feedback, he went to it like a fish to water. Yes. And it was like you couldn't have taken it away from him. And I remember asking him years later, hey, Joe, like what happened here? And he goes, it was like when we started to do those breathing and the EEG feedback and all those kind of things, that it was like I was in this little cage and all of a sudden somebody tossed me the key and I could open the cage and I could walk out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so good. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I know there's people listening. He could manage it. Yeah, he could manage it. I know there's people listening that feel like they're in the cage and they don't have a key to get out. The anxiety is just torturing them, right? Yes. And what's so crazy about Joe is then with the training, he then moved forward in his life, chose literally the hardest academic path that he could, and put himself in a space that you and I thought, can he do this? Like, really? And he did it. Like, so that's the mastery piece. Like, I'm sure he would say he hasn't mastered it, but he was the master of it, saying, I'm going to go forward. I'm going to try this. Yeah, he wasn't in the cage any longer. And not only was he not in it, he just kind of like blew it up and said, so crazy. Let's just take on more. Right. And that's where you get this whole allostatic load that makes you stronger. Right. But you need the tools to do that. And for us, the tools, they all learn to breathe. Yes. They all learn to do heart coherence, which manage their vagus nerve. They all learn to do EEG feedback. they were kind of made fun of sometimes in college because they were all so committed to sleep, which was very fascinating. It was like reducing the anxiety made them want to sleep more. So, they would have very good sleep patterns, and, they all continue to experience anxiety just like any of us do. But it's amazing to watch them just have mastered it and used it in a way that actually took them further. Right? It became something that was a catalyst for strength.
Yeah. And that's been very, very fun to watch. Okay, we're coming back to you talking about anxiety. And we've just been talking about the 4 Royer kids and how Doc and I handled some of those situations. And I do have to say, that is a journey that is ongoing. And even watching them as adults and seeing them struggle with things that produce anxiety. I mean, now we're having babies, kids get sick, it's scary, there's new anxieties. But seeing how they each go back to the tools. Like, we're not perfect. None of us are in our family, but we are blessed to have like the science and the understanding of our own makeup. And then we do have the tools because we, at each of our houses, we've got the breathing belt, we've got the brain equipment. But just on our way to the studio this morning, I just saw on my phone, because I work with our company, I saw my son was running a breathing session and then a brain session. And I thought, that's so cool, because we were going to talk about this today. And he's just using it to help himself be the best he can be. And just kind of like constantly rewiring or priming the, however you want to say it, but to allow himself not to just survive, but to thrive. Yeah.
And he could have said, hey, I got this figured out. And, but, he keeps coming back to that. And it is interesting if you ask Joe, like, now he's in Japan, just so people know. Joe's a physician in the Navy in Japan. So he's running that session this morning. Amy sees it, but it's probably later in the evening, right?
Yeah.
And, when, things get overwhelming like they do for anybody, and, Joe and I might have a conversation, before I even can say it, he says, I probably got to get back to my training first, and I need to say that to you, and I say that to each other, like, when was the last time you did a breathing session? When did you do? Because remember, the brain is adapting and learning, and it can come on very quickly if we're not paying attention to it. Is these little things that set us up to now be more wired in a negative way, right? And be more stressed, because the anxieties is never just in one spot, right? It's either making you stronger or it's making you weaker. Like, it's not a static thing, right?
And it's all the learning and relearning that gives us the hope of like doing the best we can with what we're given.
Yeah. And I would say what I really want to encourage all of you out there is this whole idea is that the only way you manage this is with a chemical alteration. If I smoke enough marijuana, if I take my Xanax, if I do my Zoloft, there can be good components to that, but that is not your solution. Your brain is so much stronger than a pill. And you got to get out of this mindset like, well, that's all I can do is these 6 bottles in front of me. And you've got to understand the power in the brain. Those things can help as little bridges.
That's
right.
Super important.
They're not the way. The way is not that. It is learning. And then when you learn, then you start to develop that confidence of like, hey, I got this thing. Right. Like I think of my quarterbacks, like I work with a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, and how they start to get anxious about the 2-minute drill. Right. Like, here it is. I got 2 minutes left in the game and I've got to score. And what we want it to be is, and we've seen this happen, get to a point that they can't wait for that to happen because the anxiety comes on and they use the power of that anxiety to make them stronger.
Yeah, that's really good. The 2-minute drill example. That's so, so true. So, Doc, we have a great example of someone you worked with and somebody who had been sold the whole chemical solution.
Yeah.
And then was finding themselves to be in worse condition. So let's go to that Cortex case study.
Yeah. So I've got this a 33-year-old young executive guy that has gotten all the right education, done all the right things, and he lands this job, and the job involves that he needs to fly and from place to place across the country. And he has a significant fear of flying. Okay. Which is not, a rare thing. 25% of people have some fear of flying, and there's 6 to 7% that it's so high that they refuse to fly.
Okay.
Right. So this is kind of a normal thing to have, at least a quarter of the population. And so what was happening was his solution from the doctor's office was to take these sedatives while he was flying.
Yes.
And he would find that on the longer trips, he'd get kind of sick. And by the time he got to his meeting in LA, that he would just be completely, checked out because he'd been taking all these benzodiazepines and things. And it was getting to the point that he was thinking about quitting his job because he's like, I can't do this. Right. Yeah. And so it was a stressor, but the stressor was now getting to the point that it was breaking him. Yeah. Right. He'd get worried the night before you'd travel.
Yeah.
And so he had a panic attack on a plane once. And so from there, he was kind of stuck. And so we first worked on, okay, you are using this pill to fill this hole. I've got to create something else that you can fill the hole with. So that takes some work. So through learning isn't an instantaneous thing. It's a learned thing that takes practice. So we immediately started working on his breathing. Worked on his breathing belt, got the breath rate, got the consistency. Then we started to measure what his heart was doing, looking at heart coherence. Was his heart going too fast, too slow? And then through his breathing, literally started to change the beating of his heart, which is crazy, right? Yep. And so now he's in control, right? And then we worked on EEG feedback, and then we started work on this thing, systematic desensitization. So I want to talk about that a little bit and kind of throw this out there. So I asked him, we'll just call him Bill. I said, Bill, let's rate, if you can imagine 0 to 100,
okay,
what would be a 95? Because 100's impossible. Okay, what is a 95 situation that would create that flying anxiety to be at its highest? And he said, I'm up in a plane, I'm already anxious, I look out, and the wing is on fire.
Okay.
Right? Well, I think I would be 95, right? But I'm like, okay, so that's a 95. Okay, so we put the 95 down. Okay, now, Bill, give me something that's a 50. Okay. Well, I get on the plane and there's a delay because of a mechanical issue. He goes, I start to breathe like I feel like I'm going to maybe pass out or something, right? Okay. Give me something that's a 25. Well, that's pretty much most of the time I fly. The moment I'm on the ramp and I step to the plane, he says, I go into this 25 and I just feel like it's starting to rev, right?
Okay.
So then what we're going to do is we've got those measurements. And so now let's first just imagine, okay? Let's imagine you're stepping onto the plane. Can we do that right here? Yes. Tell me, think through it, just kind of imagine it. Tell me when that number of that anxiety gets to 25. Okay. Just kind of raise your hand, just let me know. Okay. And so he's imagining, thinking through. I said, we're walking down the ramp. You're getting there. You can kind of see the people standing in the entryway there. When are you? I'm at a 25 in his mind, right?
So this is in your office.
This is in the office, right? Or in a Zoom call, right? So 25. Okay, now stop, Bill. I want you to start breathing the way that we've been working on the last 6 weeks.
Okay.
Do your breathing, do your heart coherence work. He starts doing that, and I say, tell me when you get to a 20, right? Within about 3 minutes, I'm back to a 20. So what he did at that moment, it seems very small, but he changed his physiology. Now, what we could do, and I've done this before, is I could literally go to the airport. We could get on the ramp. And as we're walking down the ramp, I say, okay, when are we getting to a 25? Boom. And he has this line, like right here, I'm at a 25. And I say, okay, we're going to stay on this line and we're going to breathe. We're not moving from this line until you're a 20.
Okay.
He does that. And that movement is the beginning of mastery.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
And so we can start to desensitize that, and we can get that down to a 0, right? But it takes work, and we can do that
Yes.
with all kinds of phobias.
Yeah.
But it first starts with, you have to have some type of physiological mastery, which is breathing,
Yeah.
heart coherence, brain coherence. Then we take it into the real life situation, whether it's a fear of elevators, whether it's a fear of being out in public, whether it's a fear of airplanes. And in Bill's case, we got him to the point that he flies now with no medicine, flies all over internationally. It's amazing because he learned to respond differently.
Yeah. And he's a great example because he experienced the other way first.
Yeah.
And now he has his new reality, his rewiring. It gives him a totally different experience.
And it's not a chemical.
Right.
He learned that, right?
Yeah.
So for our 2-minute drill, which is now 45-second drill, okay, is we want to take our list of possibilities and probabilities, okay, and we want to start ranking them, okay? What is that thing that you fear, okay? And I want you to start to give it a number. Mm-hmm. Once you give it a number, it becomes not this squishy, abstract, subjective, scary thing, but there's the number, right? And the place to intervene on that number is not at 90, okay? The place to intervene is at 20.
Absolutely.
Is at 30, okay? Yep. And so we got to learn to do that by first managing that. And with children, we'll do the thing where we'll put like a temperature on the, like a thermometer on the refrigerator. Where am I right now? And as a parent, if you wait till 80 to intervene, there's not the best neuropsychologist in the world can't figure that out, right?
Right.
You have to catch it at 30, at 40. And the moment they can move it 5 points, 10 points, you now have mastery.
That's awesome.
That's what it's all about.
That's helpful. That's great.
Yes. Let's go.